Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement 2. This is a follow-up video to the main channel video I recently had on the Dolch PAC-62, where I upgraded the screen with an iPad 3 screen and a new controller to get rid of the really terrible screen that was in that thing. And I ran into an issue where that screen was unable to display DOS resolutions. That's a big problem for a retro PC, which of course boots up into text mode and you're working in MS-DOS before you might run Windows 3.1 or even Windows 95. So due to that limitation, I ended up having to use the very slow and unsupported video card that was originally in the Dolch PAC-62 that always outputs 640 by 480 through the VGA connector on the side, because that's how I'm connecting up the iPad screen. So in the comments on that video, a lot of people suggested that perhaps I needed to hook up the iPad screen over DVI and that would have fixed the problem. Now, of course, one of the issues is that thing is a Pentium 233. It has PCI and ISA slots. And as far as I'm aware, there are no ISA video cards that have DVI on them at all. And then for PCI, only very late model video cards had DVI on them, usually VGA and DVI. And that was way beyond the time when anyone really cared about MS-DOS anymore. And one of the criteria for the PAC-62 is I need Windows 3.1 to work on there. So I really would like to have a video card that has video drivers for Windows 3.1. So originally the idea was I would use a fast PCI VGA video card with the Dolch, and I thought that was going to work with the iPad 3 screen. But as you saw in the video, it didn't. So I had to go with that really slow card, and in the end, it's a workable solution. But I can't even run 256 colors in Windows 3.1 because none of the drivers I could find actually work. So what I want to do in this video is test out the idea that you can take the iPad screen, and I happen to have an extra one of those iPad 3 screens I put in the Dolch, and pair it with a video card that has DVI. And I have this ATI card, it's AGP, but it has DVI, VGA, and S-video. Obviously, I won't be able to use this card as it stands in the Dolch if it does work, but for testing, I broke out this slot 1 AT motherboard. It's got ISA, PCI, and AGP on it. I think this is a 500 megahertz CPU as well, so pretty speedy. And then I also found this video card, which I'm actually not 100% sure what this is, but I'm pretty sure this is standard PCI. Let me just double check. Yes, it is normal PCI, and it's also got DVI, VGA, and S-video. I know I have one other PCI video card around that has DVI as well. It's an NVIDIA something or other, FX something, something, something. It's kind of a late model card, but I couldn't find that easily, and these two cards came to hand, and I figured if either of these cards can work with this display, then at the minimum I can try to see if I can get Windows 3.1 drivers working with either of these cards, and well, we'll go from there. I think the big thing is, of course, is getting it working with the screen. So first I have a lot of unknowns before you can get to the iPad screen. I need to test to see if this motherboard is working, and I also need to test to see if both of these video cards are working, because neither of these or none of these have check marks on them, which I like to put on things if I've tested them. So let me get this stuff set up so we can at least test this first with just regular VGA capture device. Now with this particular motherboard, it would be really cool to try to use this in the Dolch, because obviously this is really fast. And look, I have a tick mark on the CPU at least, but I don't see one on the motherboard. The reason why it's not an easy fit, even though the motherboard itself physically fits in the Dolch without an issue, the problem on the Dolch is that the internal power supply is mounted over this area of the motherboard, kind of around the power connectors and where the CPU is. And unfortunately, it sits very, very close to the motherboard. In fact, on the motherboard that's in there, the memory modules that are in that motherboard, I'm using SDRAM just like this, and I had to use low profile modules because the power supply sits almost touching these little RAM hold down things. So the memory module I had to use had to be lower profile than these normal ones. Well, clearly the CPU is way too big. So if I want to use this motherboard in the Dolch, it's possible. I just would have to swap out or gut the entire power supply and cut away all the metal structure, replace it with something else. I could maybe mount a power supply over here remotely, and then figure out how to mount the power switch and the IEC jack and run those over to the power supply over here and then to the motherboard. It would be possible. It's just a bunch more work than I was willing to do right off the bat, at least. I do have another fast motherboard that would fit in the Dolch, and it's a Super Socket 7 with an AMD K62 450, I think it is. It's not going to be nearly as fast as this when it comes to overall performance, but it's still going to be an upgrade over the 233 or 266 or whatever I have in there now. The K62 motherboard also has AGP, and it does fit without any modification because the CPU is located over in this area, and over here it's very similar to the current motherboard when it comes to the RAM. I just have to reuse that same low profile memory. Okay, let's take a look at these two video cards. This one looks really dirty. I don't think I've cleaned this up. Now we can notice this card has 128 megs of RAM, warranty sticker, UPC code, and don't know, maybe this is some kind of a 6200, whatever that is. It looks okay. I don't see any damage to the board. That's good, because I don't know where I got this. Completely unknown. Obviously, if it works and I go to use this, it needs some serious cleaning. I snapped a photo of the picture with Google Lens, and it says right here that it's a GeForce 6200 AGP, released April 4th, 2005. NV44 graphics processor, DirectX 9.0, up to 256 megabytes of RAM in a 64-bit interface. AGP 8X interface, it outputs DVI, VGA, and S-video, and it's part of the GeForce 6 series. All right, well, it might have said it was AGP. Well, clearly this is not AGP, and I don't think this has the 256 megs of RAM. It's got the 128, but of course it all worries me that, again, the main issue is that this is way too new to have this actually work with something like Windows 3.1. I mean, obviously it will work in 3.1 with 640 by 40 by 16 colors, which is exactly how it's working now, which, to be honest, might not be the end of the world. And with a fast motherboard, if I pair it to a fast motherboard, Windows 95 would work really well with that, and surely there are drivers for this for Windows 95/Windows 98. Okay, let's see if we have the capture device. Yes, we do. This is all plugged in. Let's turn on the power supply. Let's see if this thing works. The fan is horribly noisy on that card. Oh, it's all working. Pentium 3 at 500 megahertz, 256 megs of RAM, and the video card is functional. That's excellent. That is very excellent. Now with this particular capture device I'm using, it doesn't tell us what the input frequency is, but we know that this is running at 720 by 400, and that means it's 70 hertz. So it's exactly like normal VGA text mode that the iPad screen does not support, at least over the VGA connector. But either way, this card's working and the motherboard is working, at least on first blush, which is great. Let's try the other card. Okay, looking at the other card, do I know what this is? No. Other than it's an ATI, it seems to have half the memory that it possibly could have. It's missing a bunch of components for whatever reason. It does have all three of the connectors. We could probably look up what that part number is to figure out what kind of ATI chip this is, but do we really care? No, not really. There it is anyways, Radeon 9600 SE, 128 megabytes, made in China. Another pretty late model card that probably has no support for any Windows 3.1. Nice thing about this one, no fan, because it's probably slower and crappier. But let's see if this one works. I can't even plug that in. Okay, well, I guess we can't test this card. I don't know what the difference is. Is this like 3.3 volts versus 5 volts? AGP 2X versus 3X? You got me. Is it somehow possible that that's not an AGP slot? Like, is it something else that's proprietary? It's gotta be AGP. It seems to be the right size. It's just the notch is in the wrong spot. Okay, I went and grabbed my K62 motherboard. Doesn't have a heatsink on it, but K62 500 Super Socket 7. Well, we can see that the AGP slot there matches this AGP slot. So whatever this is, this AGP slot is not compatible with this card. So I'm sure people watching are going to know exactly what's going on here with the AGP slot. This is obviously a later version. Just let me know in the comment section what this is. I really don't know much about AGP because this was a very short-lived connector. I think I might have had one video card in my life that used this connector, and then everything else after that went to PCI Express. And I don't know where I got this card, and I don't know when this thing came out. And obviously, it's not compatible with these older motherboards. Okay, well that means we're going to be testing the iPad screen with this one card, and let's see if this actually can work. Since we can't test it with the AGP card, I decided to break out my usual test bench PCI motherboard. I think it's a Pentium 166 or something like that. It's got PCI ISA slots, as you can see, and it's working. It's booted up right now, and I'm using this ISA video card. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because I had the PCI video card plugged into here, and it was not working. It was not doing anything at all. Let's give this a try again. I did blow the dust off this card. It's still noisy, but less dusty at least. We seem to just have no activity. And I'm really wondering if this has some kind of incompatibility, this card, with older chipsets. This is an Intel chipset, but it's just an older one than on the other motherboard. And we're not getting anything, no posting. And I know this PCI card is getting power because the fan is running, because I hear its stupid noisiness. Let's try yet a different slot. It's odd too that we don't even have a beep code. There is a speaker on this motherboard. I wonder if I pull the card out. I mean, we're not even getting like the single beep for a regular post. It's kind of doing nothing. Let me grab a post analyzer card. Well, it's at D, postcode D, 0D. I know you can't see that. And frankly, the main reason why I grabbed this motherboard is because it's got, you know, reset button, speaker and stuff, but it also has the compact flash card adapter already on here, ready to go. And I don't really want to move this over to that other slot 1 motherboard, and especially because that slot 1 motherboard isn't even one I can use in the Dolch. I can use a motherboard like this in the Dolch more easily. All right, we'll go back to this motherboard, at least temporarily. Well, this is funny. I was just unpacking the second iPad screen, and I noticed that it came with, I guess, a piece of glass or plexiglass. I'm not sure if this is plastic. I guess it's just something to put over the screen. I have 2 in here because I ordered 2 of these screens. I guess it's just something to put over the screen. No, what is this even? It doesn't even fit on the screen. It's like not even the right size. It's slightly too small. So I'm not sure what this even is. Why was this even included? That's funny. I just never noticed it was even in the package with the screens. Here's that second screen. Actually, I haven't tested this, so hopefully it works. Because if it doesn't, we're out of luck, because it's really hard to get these right now in the United States. I have 12 volts center positive, which I know is what this thing wants. It actually says DC 12 volts on the back. So we'll pop this in. Green light's on. Let's power this on. Okay, good. Screen works. That's excellent. So I think we to get out of this little diagnostic mode, I can't remember what we do. Push some buttons. Okay, there we go. No signal. Okay, well, for hooking it up, I have this cable here. It's DVI to HDMI, and it's HDMI D, which definitely looks like is what's on this card. So this cable's way too thick, but it's just what I had at hand. Okay, this button here switches between auto, analog, and HDMI. I'm just gonna leave it on HDMI. And I guess moment of truth, when I turn this on, will we get a solid DOS image, or will we just have a screwed up picture like we had on the Dolch, which is the same parts as this, hooked up over VGA? Here we go, 3, 2, 1. Oh, it freaking works. Oh, wow. Okay, everyone was right with their thoughts on if this did work or not. And it does. Let's just prop up the screen so it doesn't have so much glare on it. Look at that, it freaking works. Well, that is excellent, actually. I was really hoping it would, actually, because I didn't feel like having to switch all of this stuff out with another screen. Okay, so I'm going to the BIOS. Look at that, it freaking works. It freaking works. The question is why doesn't it work over VGA? That's the question. And it looks perfect. It looks spectacular right now. Let's go to the menu and look at the input settings. Oh, this menu is terrible. Absolutely terrible. Ah, look at that. Look at that. Can I get the camera to focus in on this? Okay, it was very interesting it disappeared. Let's try to get that back. How do I get back over there? Oh, it's really hard to read. But it does say 1360 something by 768 at 59 Hertz. So it's kind of my assumption that this screen doesn't support those modes. It's able to send its supported modes, EIDI or whatever that is, over the cable back to the card, and the GPU is actually doing the scaling for the text DOS mode here. Very interesting. Well, I really need to get this computer booted. Let's try switching over to the SuperSocket 7, since that's a more realistic motherboard to use in the Dolch, and let's see if this card works with that. So SuperSocket 7 has an ALI chipset, so it doesn't have an Intel chipset. That dust is caked on there. Let's just try to brush this away a little bit. Yeah, so SuperSocket 7, these are totally within the era where you could have bad caps on them, but none of these look bad. I don't know if I've tested this setup, but I kind of feel like I might have, because it has an IKEA clock battery on there, and that's indicative of something I would do. All right, well, I don't have a clip-on heatsink handy, so we're just going to use this one. I'm just going to place it on top of the CPU. I know it's not ideal, but should be good enough. All right, let's see if this works. Let's make sure everything is connected correctly. Yes, it is. Here we go. Is it gonna work? Come on. Oh, there we go. I was getting worried for a second that it wasn't gonna work. Yeah, K62 500. Yeah, heatsink is making contact with the CPU. Let's just make sure that it's not overheating. Yeah, no, it's cool to the touch. Okay, so that's working. So what I want to do now is I want to boot into DOS. I want to see what the performance of this card is like in DOS. So I have my ISA IDE card in there again. We need to disable the onboard IDE, which was already disabled. Cool. And let's change this. Is that really 1902? 2021, whatever. Just put in something that's a little more reasonable. Primary master ARM-D. CD-ROM auto. Okay, we'll just leave it on auto, see if that works. Guess I could try auto detection. It's detecting it. Mode, it just says on. Okay. Okay, it went to reboot. This is what we're getting. Nothing. Gotta love this era of stuff. Gotta love it. It's not like the CPU is burning hot. Here it is. It's trying to boot. It doesn't work. Boot failure. Look, it's trying to use the Ultra DMA transfer modes. This card 100% works. In fact, here, why don't we switch this card over to the other one? But this one was in the Dolch. I took it out of the Dolch and put it in this card a moment ago. Let's reboot the system with a different card in there. Different card, same results. I moved the compact flash card onto the onboard IDE. I went and enabled it in the BIOS, but there's an issue. Whenever you go to the BIOS and you do a reset with this card or the motherboard, I don't know which it is, you get black screen. That's frustrating. You have to power cycle the computer. I'm assuming if there was a reset button, that would probably work as well. But on the Dolch, I don't have a reset button. Therefore, every time I went to the BIOS, I'd have to power cycle the computer. That seems like quite an annoyance, to be honest. And it detected the card and oh, it's booting. Look at that. So it doesn't support the ISA IDE card. Very interesting. Okay, whatever. We're booted into DOS. Gives me a chance to run some benchmarks. Let's try to get this so you can see it a little bit better. Performance for DOS text mode is very good. Very, very good. Let's do a vid speed run through. This will test all the different graphics modes that are supported, and we will get the bytes per millisecond output of this. And I think the flashing we're seeing is just all the various type modes being tested. It's just happening so quickly we're not really seeing anything. A few positives to talk about with this is with the DVI connection, we don't have any of the issues with this picture being off the side. We're having to push auto and whatnot. So that is fantastic. I would really like to get this combo working. And I mean, if this card just worked in the Dolch as it is with that motherboard, that would be fantastic. Maybe it would actually. I think my biggest problem is this thick cable. I need something better than this. This is not ideal sticking out the side of the computer like that. I need a right angle connector that I can then tuck inside like I did with the VGA connector. DOS performance is good, 25,000 bytes per millisecond in all of the different text modes. That is absolutely excellent, actually. Now here's an interesting test. If we run Jim Leonard's CGA compatibility suite, the main reason for running this is not just to look at the CGA stuff, but there's an option here that allows us to see what refresh rate the system is currently running at. Remember that in the menu for the screen, it said it was running at 60 Hertz right now. And I think if we go into here under vertical retrace, this should tell us. So it really is actually running at 60 Hertz right now. It is not running at the normal 70 Hertz that DOS stuff typically runs at. That's actually potentially a small issue for DOS games because they expect to be running at 70 Hertz or half of that is 35 Hertz. That's why Doom has a cap of 35 frames per second. It's based on that MS-DOS 320 by 200 graphics mode. We can look at the performance, which is going to be pretty good. And that's simply because, of course, this processor is much faster than the one on the Dolch, being that this is actually, that's hot. That is a hot CPU there. Wow. Anyways, this is a much faster CPU. Even though it's not as fast as that slot 1 CPU, this is still pretty decent. So we can see that we're locked at 35 frames per second. Even though I don't see any obvious tearing, this looks quite good. And I'm sure it will feel fine too. Yep, this feels about as good as you could expect. And if we run Duke 3D, this should also work really well. Better than that crappy video card in the Dolch that's there now. That thing is terrible performance. And yeah, this is excellent. Very nice. I don't have any mouse or anything plugged in, so yeah, excellent. And even better is I'm pretty sure that this will run at VESA resolution because that card is really fast, I think. So we go to screen setup and we can do VESA modes, and let's try 640 by 480. Yeah, I mean, that looks pretty good. And we're definitely running at a higher resolution than we were in 320 by 200. Well, that's pretty cool, I gotta say. Pretty cool indeed. Okay, well, I think that's gonna be it for this video. I just turned this poor thing off. The heatsink is so hot. The poor processor under there must be baking since I don't even have any thermal compound on. Okay, well, everyone who suggested using DVI with this iPad screen, iPad 3 screen, you were right. At least this card freaking works perfectly. How cool is that? That is awesome. Now that I know this works, I think I need to spend some more time looking for my other PCI video card that has DVI. I think that thing has a large heatsink on it and it doesn't have a noisy fan like this. I don't really want this horribly noisy fan inside the Dolch. The thing is so silent right now. So passive heatsink would be a lot better. So the next question is how do I get a right angle cable to plug into this card so this thing doesn't have this thick cable sticking out the side of the Dolch? That would be very annoying because every time I move that around, the cable sticking out the side could easily catch on something and break the connector or break the cable. I would much rather have a right angle DVI, which I'm sure they exist. I'm just thinking about which way this card sits in the Dolch, and it sits this way with the heatsink and the fan facing up. That means the right angle connector I'm looking for has to come out and go down. So if you're aware of any DVI connectors that have a right angle connector that face down, so like this, go down, doesn't need to be this thick. It only needs to be maybe like this long and have an HDMI connector on the other end to plug into the iPad controller. Then if this card works in the Dolch now, that would be a relatively easy retrofit. And it wouldn't be too hard for me to even test that out to try this card in there. But I do need to find the other one, like I said, which I think is a Zotac card, and see if that card works in there. And if it does, then this is a great solution. This really fixes all the problems that I have with this screen. I guess the only thing is there a Windows 3.1 drivers for this? Somehow I doubt it. I know there are VESA Windows 3.1 drivers these days. I tried those out on one of my retro machines and performance was pretty terrible on a slow computer. On a fast machine, which I think is what they're kind of designed for, like running them on a Pentium 4, it's probably fine. Maybe with this K62500, it would be okay, but I think on the original 240 megahertz processor that's in there with this card, it probably would be pretty sucky. All I really needed to do though is work in 256 colors inside Windows 3.1. And honestly, I will get Windows 95 working on that machine. And if there's Windows 95 drivers for this, then that's great. I would also like to kind of boot that thing with maybe a version of Linux, and then probably get a version of Windows 2000 or maybe XP, like a minimal XP running on there as well. I could have different compact flash cards I could switch to, or maybe partition one. Lots of possibilities. But the fact that this card works so well with this screen over the digital interface, that is excellent. And I really do appreciate everyone who suggested that. Thank you very much for that. And I will add one other thing, by the way, is that a bunch of people said they have used the iPad 2 screen with an external controller. And whatever controller is compatible with the iPad 2 screen, which incidentally is not Retina, it's only 1024 by 768, that controller does work over VGA in regular DOS resolutions. So that was one of my other possibilities, was trying to find an iPad 2 screen and then the appropriate controller and switching that out on the Dolch. Luckily, the way the screen mounts, the iPad 3 and iPad 2 is identical, apparently, so I should have been able to reuse that 3D printed mount that I made. But with this solution, I don't need to do that. I just need to find the right cable that's thin and we'll be able to route properly. And then, yeah, this is actually kind of exciting. I'm really looking forward to have that much more improved DOS performance with a PCI video card over that terrible card that's in the Dolch right now. All right, that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, thumbs up. If you didn't, you know what to do. A huge thanks to my members and supporters. Their names are on the side of the screen. They make it possible to do this full time. And subscribe, usual YouTube junk, and that's gonna be that. So stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.